Since he became Prime Minister, he and the Home Secretary dismissed calls for an inquiry because they did not want to cause a stir. They accused those of us demanding justice for the victims of this scandal as, and I quote, jumping on a far-right bandwagon. Yes.
Keir Starmer said it would be racist to have an inquiry into rape gangs in the UK. He's having an inquiry into rape gangs in the UK. Is Keir Starmer a racist? Hello, you Awakening Wonders. Thanks for joining us today. Remember, we stream these days and times on Rumble. Join us there where we can speak freely about subjects such as the apparent hypocrisy and contradiction of claiming it would be racist to hold an inquiry into rape gangs.
Calling for inquiries because they want to jump on a bandwagon of the far right.
In fact, that the whole furore around rape gangs was a result of hysteria and xenophobia and Islamophobia and numerous phobias, maybe arachnophobia in there somewhere, before agreeing that it would be a good idea. Now, when you watch this news footage from a British legacy media outlet and you see victims of rape gangs talking about their experience and waiving their anonymity, you realise, as I increasingly do these days, that behind these hot take stories and these divisive cultural issues are often broken and abused people. And because of the level of vitriol that seems to be a consistent ingredient in the online conversation, it's difficult to remember our shared and common humanity. So let's talk about rape gangs and perhaps see if there's a solution to this aspect of the UK's crisis, a crisis that appears to include growing authoritarianism, the criminalisation of free speech, advancing towards a surveillance state in a number of ways, including the proposed brick card ID. Maybe it's not so different here in the United States with Palantir, an organisation who include amidst their many skills a vast surveillance capacity, advancing their agenda through their relationships with the current administration. But now let's focus on the rape gangs and whether or not this inquiry will bring about justice and an end to young women being raped by, well, gangs. The reason we're even discussing grooming gangs is because Elon Musk reposted Tommy Robinson on X. If it were up to the people in government, X would be closed down in the UK and Tommy Robinson would be in jail. So whatever you're getting from people in government, it's kind of lies and at best prevarication, equivocation, dissemination, manipulation, obfuscation. Because if it was up to them, X would be banned, Rumble would be shut down, independent news voices would be destroyed, Tommy Robinson would be in prison. So bear that in mind while watching all of this.
In her review, Baroness Louise Casey said to prevent this abuse, we must first understand it, and to date, we have failed in that duty. But she has other criticisms of those in power too.
Is the politics behind this unhelpful?
Yes, the politics behind this is unhelpful. I find it very hard because I think it was absolutely right that the Prime Minister got a grip of this. I actually think he couldn't have announced on just because people are shouting that they want a national inquiry all of a sudden. You can't then say, I tell you what, we'll spend 10 years on a multi-million-pound national inquiry when actually I might have found that we needed to do the criminal investigation and nothing else. When the Home Secretary said...
It's interesting that the Baroness said let's keep politics out of it before making an explicitly political point there, i.e. that the Prime Minister shouldn't be blamed for initially saying that there was no requirement for an inquiry. But he didn't just neutrally say there was no requirement for an inquiry, he said that it was racist to push for one. There are numerous high-level Labour figures that made comparable claims. So while Baroness Casey, there's point that playing politics is not the solution to a significant cultural and social problem, she is even in that answer playing politics to a degree. To truly not play politics, I think you would need an entirely different political system. You'd need to think that an organisation like Channel 4 News were reliable. You would need to believe that there weren't a more malfeasant agenda behind mass migration, i.e. social disruption. The belief that a significant part of globalisation is encouraging mass migration to disrupt indigenous populations. In a way, it's the same as colonialisation. This is people who believe in it, believe this. My beliefs are these days quite tempered, but people that believe in displacement theory say that mass migration is a way of, one, causing significant competition in the job market, and two, disrupting the native populations. Let me know what you think in the comments and chat.
And the Home Secretary said, I'm apologising for what happened. I was disappointed that the opposition of the day couldn't dig deep and join in that apology.
If the government thought agreeing to a statutory inquiry would take the heat out of this debate, it hasn't. But at the very least, it's given some survivors hope that they might finally get justice.
Well, just before we came on air, I spoke to the Minister for Safeguarding, Jess Phillips. Jess Phillips, with the benefit of hindsight, was it a mistake to describe people who were calling for a national inquiry as jumping on a far-right bandwagon?
Look, I didn't say anything of the sort.
It's weird, isn't it? Because everyone's priorities is defending their own position. There's no one behaving with integrity and earnestness within the entire conversation. Jess Phillips, I didn't say that. That was only the Prime Minister that said that. So how many of us are even able to focus for a moment on the fact that the declared problem is migrant gangs, disproportionately Pakistani men, are forming gangs and raping young white British girls? How are we going to deal with the fact that much of this was exposed by that great pariah of the mainstream media and the UK, Tommy Robinson, who is one of those figures in the popular imagination who's received so much condemnation and criticism, who's a difficult character in some ways. But I have had a fascination for Tommy Robinson for a long while, primarily because when I was sort of coming up on the left, you might say, there was always this idea that working class people needed to be engaged in politics, that working class people being captivated and distracted by popular culture was a problem. Why aren't working class people as passionate about politics as they are about football? Well, nowadays they are, and it's because of men like Tommy Robinson. The problem is the intelligentsia class, the media class, the professional class seem to have a strong preference as to the direction of Great Britain. And when they say we want working class people involved in politics, what they mean is we want working class people to believe in the politics we believe in. And the fact is, they don't.
Fume is the sponsor of today's video. It's not just another lousy vape, e-cig or nicotine product, it's something totally different. It's a simple, satisfying way to replace bad habits without inhaling anything harmful. No smoke, no vapor, no nicotine, just natural flavoured air that gives you something to reach for without the chemicals. It's not just about flavour. Fume has a magnetic, fidget-friendly design that keeps your hands busy and your mind engaged. Flavours that actually taste delicious. My favourite is crisp mint, but there are tons of options from citrusy to earthy to refreshing. Over 500,000 people have already added Fume to their daily routine, and I totally get why. It's simple, satisfying, and doesn't come with any of the downsides of smoking or vaping. And right now, if you order the Journey Pack using my code RussellBrand, you'll get a free Fume topper. So if you've been thinking about changing your habits, this is the perfect first step. Go to tryfume.com/RussellBrand or scan the QR code on your screen and grab yours today, baby. Grab your Fume and get that sweet flavoured air.
I think what you're referring to is the Prime Minister suggesting that Conservative politicians, one of whom, so Kemi Badenoch, had been under the last decade, she was the Children's Minister and the Equalities Minister and the Shadow.
Should have done something when you was... So here Jess Phillips plays politics again. And again, obviously, you can't blame Jess Phillips or Keir Starmer or Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the current opposition in the UK, who Jess Phillips is about to say could have done something when she was Minister of Children or Minister of Grooming Gangs. They're more interested, aren't they, in the allocation of blame and the preservation of systemic power than the solution to the problem. Do you think that we, as participants in the culture ourselves, albeit tragically, sadly, too often passively, are capable at least of keeping our minds and our focus and our hearts on the goal in hand? Are we able to manage this? This is the task, isn't it? How do you solve the problem of rape gangs? How do you create cultural conditions where, in seeking to find justice for these women that have been raped and consequences and justice for the perpetrators of those rapes, not generate cultural conditions where white working class people in general and non-white Muslim people in general hate one another and are killing each other on the streets? That's the obvious peripheral threat. Or that there's going to be wave after wave of demand for mass deportation. Are we able to accept this is where we are now? A country like the UK has a large Muslim population. Not all of the large Muslim population are involved in rape gangs. It's a significant number proportionately, but not a significant number generally. There's probably, I don't know, is it 5,000 or 10,000 men that need to be in jail or deported? I don't know what the solution is, and actually I'm through talking solutions. Joe, I think the solution is referenda. Say, look, these are the people, we've done our best to hold fair trials within the corrupt and limited judicial and legal systems that we're trying to manage, and the way they intersect with politics and the way they intersect with media. These people appear to be perpetrators. What do you want to do? Kill them? Deport them? Jail them? What do you want? At this point, the decline in trust in authority is so steep and significant, there are no political organisations that people are willing to trust. The only solution is decentralisation, referenda, mass democracy and consultation. That's the only solution. Perhaps alongside that, and sufficiently to absolutely permeate it, belief in some principles that are transcendent of this systemic bickering.
Home Secretary, who was a policing minister and had never mentioned the issue of grooming gangs at all when they had the power to do anything about it.
Do you still think they're jumping on a far-right bandwagon?
I think that if they'd cared, they would have done something when Telford came to them and asked for a national inquiry. They said no. I think if they'd cared, that they would have made the ethnicity data, which is still utterly woeful, even though in Alexis Jay's review into grooming gangs, which led to a 200-page document, it said that the collection of ethnicity data was bad. It is still bad.
You seem to interchange the use of Asian, Pakistani and Muslim at different times in this report, and that's very problematic for a lot of people. Asia stretches from China and Japan to Afghanistan and parts of Turkey.
Of course, but I think that probably speaks to how poorly that data is collected.
How you can give yourself a media studies lesson while watching this interview is to observe what Jess Phillips says and what the agenda must be on that basis. And here's my offering. The agenda is control. In order to maintain control, you are competing with one other political parties. In our countries like yours, Democrats, Republicans, in ours it's Labour, Conservative. So her agenda is to simply say the problems have been generated by the only other alternative to us being in government. So even if you, and I'm sure you do, think we're shit, we're not as shit as them. Now, the we're not as shit as them system is a pervasive, overriding, overwhelming and global system. It was briefly disrupted when for a minute people thought that MAGA and Trump might deliver a populist administration. But as you can see now, even that is endlessly bifurcating. Trump versus Elon, Trump versus Tucker, Iran, Israel. New arguments, new political issues emerging daily that suggest that even were you to find a somewhat unique popular leader, as America has done, in the end, the system itself would create endless disintegration.
I think that is one of the problems, is that the categorisations, as you will know, as people who we all fill in forms, don't we, are often very broad brush.
So what ethnicity data will now be collected? I mean, will you just be categorising people as Asian?
No. So look, I'm not going to. We have to mandate this. It will have to be done through consultation with the police.
Well, wouldn't it just be accurate to say what people's origin is? You know, and if it's Pakistani, say it's Pakistani. If it's Indonesian, say it's whatever. Is that what you're going to do?
Look, I'm not going to preempt those conversations. This is a report we received a week ago, because it's very easy just for me to sit here and say, do you know how complex police databases are? What I don't want to do is lie to you.
But at the moment, the Home Secretary slurred the whole continent.
No, the Home Secretary did not do that. What she talked about was the data that already exists within the police forces that Louise Casey...
Now, why do they want us just to care about woke issues and cultural identity matters? Because there you can be mired endlessly in bickering about semantics rather than focusing on the significant and obvious problems that exist when it comes to looking at criminal data, handling the media, running a nation.
Does the data say there is a disproportionate number of Chinese people who are in child grooming gangs, for example?
No, the data does not say that.
Well, then why does she say there is a disproportionate number of Asians?
Because, as I've just said, there is a problem with the way that the data is collected. Do you know what? I think that language is really important.
By the way, that interview's been pre-taped and they've cut in Krishna Gurumurthy, the anchor, doing that. Probably subsequently, maybe he did that expression at the time, but news media is itself entertainment. And obviously the dynamic between the person being interviewed, this politician, and Krishna Gurumurthy is a type of entertainment. That's not live, I'm guessing. That's not live. My guess is that was cut in. I don't reckon they'd have been quick enough to live cut that flick of the eyes. Have a look at it again. Do you see that's a comedic editorial choice that's being made there, because it's indeed entertainment. Remember, our focus is, what do we do about these grooming gangs? What do we do about mass migration? What happens if you import a culture that doesn't align or assimilate successfully into the indigenous native culture? One of the imperatives of globalism is to break down people's national identity without giving people another cohesive modality or set of rules or guidelines or beliefs that mean something. We're living in a time, it seems to me, of disintegration, decomposition and decay, and without renewal, revival, regeneration and reawakening, we're in serious trouble across the world. Let me know in the comments and chat if you agree with that. The issue re-entered the spotlight earlier this year when Elon Musk, the tech billionaire, started repeatedly criticising Keir Starmer and demanding a nationwide inquiry. Keir Starmer said, "I've always said that we should always implement the recommendations we have got because we have got many other recommendations. I've never said we should not look at any issue." Again, the focus is not the issue. The focus is the preservation of their own position.
And when politicians, and I mean politicians, who sat in government for many years, are casual about honesty, decency, truth, and the rule of law, calling for inquiries because they want to jump on a bandwagon of the far right, then that affects politics, because a robust debate can only be based on the true fact.
Brilliant. There he is saying it in plain sight, as they say in mainstream media these days. Keir Starmer conducting an inquiry now because of media pressure and cultural and social pressure, not because he wants justice for the women that have been raped by gangs. One man who has a lot of insight into the workings of deep government is Dominic Cummings, who was a key advisor to Boris Johnson during the Brexit breakup. Here's Dominic Cummings on this issue.
Came to me in the Department of Education and said, "There's this Times journalist who wants to write this story about these gangs. The local authority wants to judicially review it and stop the Times publishing the story." So I went to Michael Gove and said, "This council is trying to actually stop."
What, is it Rotherham?
Yeah, it's trying to stop this, and they're going to use judicial review. You should tell the council that far from siding with the council to stop the Times, you will write to the judge and hand over a whole bunch of documents and actually blow up the council's JR. Gove, to his credit, and various other officials strongly agreed with me. So it's a classic thing in Whitehall, right? Some officials wanted a total cover-up and were on the side of the council. In the end, there will be an inquiry. It'll be a total for Whitehall, because it will reveal how much Whitehall worked to try and cover up the whole thing.
So his testimony is significant, testimony, insight, call it what you will, because this is someone who understands the inner workings of government. And what he's testified there, or at least declared there, is that the government received pressure from journalists, that journalists repress stories because of their relationship with members of councils, that's a local government authority leader, and that there are connections between media and government when it comes to information on significant subjects that have a lot of popular appeal and have generated a lot of public interest. So here you just heard a relationship between the Times, the government, local councils. The Times is a Rupert Murdoch-owned press title. They were significantly involved indeed in reporting on me. So I know a lot about the way that they operate and the way that they work and generate and conceal significant information. What's mostly important here, though, is that these stories and this inquiry wouldn't be happening without independent media, or at least without social media sites like X. And so whatever you feel about Elon Musk, in this instance, his involvement in the matter has led to an inquiry into rape gangs. That's surely positive. And without Tommy Robinson, the much derided and attacked journalist and political figure, this story would not have been told. So you might think Tommy Robinson is a racist or a lunatic or a working class thug or whatever, but without his involvement, these rape gangs would not have been exposed because a lot of people in the space of investigative journalism would prefer not to tell stories of this nature for reasons that I don't fully understand, to be honest. In January, Mr. Musk criticised both Sir Keir and Jess Phillips. Jess Phillips is the woman just saw on the news, the safeguarding minister responsible for tackling violence against women and girls. His repeated interventions on X demanding a national inquiry forced the issue up the agenda in British politics and also created strains between Keir Starmer's government and the incoming Trump administration. Asked when the inquiry would launch, Keir said on Saturday it would be statutory under the Inquiries Act. This will take a bit of time to work out exactly how it works and we'll set that out in an orderly way. It's also unclear how long the inquiry will last. Statutory inquiries can last for years before conclusions and recommendations are made. So this is something that could drag on. It could be a long while before you see victims get justice and perpetrators jailed. That's what seems to be saying there anyway. Police avoided pursuing grooming gangs for fear of being viewed as racist, Baroness Casey's report has found. That's the person you saw speaking earlier on the news. Casey found that in too many cases, police forces and local authorities avoided prosecuting perpetrators because they were worried about looking bigoted and inflaming community tensions. But do you think that's really the reason? Looking racist, inflaming community tensions? Why would that be? When you examine the actions of the powerful or powerful institutions, always consider this. How does it lead to control? Because when they dress it up as concern, they're lying to you. Because if concern and welfare were the agenda, the world would look very, very different. I'm not suggesting that individuals, even powerful individuals like Keir Starmer or Jess Phillips, are participating in conspiracies. Of course I'm not. I'm saying that institutionally, when you find yourself in that position, you've just watched them. All they care about is protecting their position, and all they will do in order to protect that position is claim in a variety of ways, we're not as shit as the opposition. That's what happens in politics across the world. If you tune into these basic ingredients, this kind of molecular politics, listen to what they're saying. We should be in control because we care about you, and even though we're shit, we're not as shit as the opposition. That's continually what they're saying. It's a wonderful recipe to be aware of. In something as significant as this, i.e. a transgression so steep and severe that it causes a public outrage and caught the attention of someone powerful enough to subvert centralised media and centralised government control, in this case Elon Musk, amplifying the reporting of Tommy Robinson, you suddenly have a scenario where they're forced to confront an issue they were planning to avoid and ignore. That's the long and the short of the story. She concluded the establishment has been in denial over the ethnicity of grooming gangs and suggested there's been a widespread cover-up, with flawed data being used to enable them to dismiss claims about Asian grooming gangs as sensationalised, biased or untrue. Casey found that the information on the ethnicity of abusers was not recorded in 2/3 of cases. Extraordinary. The report includes local data from three forces showing clear evidence of overrepresentation among suspects of Pakistani heritage. She refers to examples of organisations avoiding the topic altogether for fear of appearing racist or raising community tension. But that can't be the real reason. They're not thinking we can't raise community tension. What they mean by that is we don't want widespread disruption and revolution. The report added, this does no one any favours at all, least of all the Asian and Pakistani and Muslim communities. Well, there you have it. A beautiful window into how power truly operates. It preserves itself, it blames its opponents, and it lies en masse. It's only when independent media and forces outside of their control, in this instance Elon Musk and Tommy Robinson, by happenstance and anti-establishment tendencies, oppose them, that the issue's even being discussed at all. In conclusion, can't trust the media, can't trust the government, and there are some serious questions about whether or not this inquiry will lead to justice for anyone. But that's just what I think. Why don't you let me know what you think in the comments and chat. Remember, join us on Rumble on these days at these times. In the meantime, if you can, stay free.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.